Operator.
Good afternoon. I'm the MLA for Alberta Pacific Rim. I'm the official opposition critic for Aboriginal Affairs. I wasn't actually planning on speaking today, but I was asked to, so I'd like to just begin by acknowledging the Simpson traditional territory, chief, elders, residential school survivors, family members who have lost loved ones, friends that have lost friends. I'd like to begin by thank Commissioner Opal and thank you for being here and beginning this process, and the Commission Council too, please, thank you. It's important work and there's a lot of hope, I think, for this process. And I guess with that, I'd just like to reiterate and echo what was Grania, I think, said so more eloquently than I'll ever be able to say it, with more passion certainly, but the Missing Women's Task Force, the recommendations of the Commission or Missing Women's Inquiry, and the recommendations to fund the 13 groups. I come from a New Chalmette territory. There's a term, Hishukisawa, all things are one, everything is connected. What happened in downtown East Side, we need to know from that to inform us. What failures in that investigation happened must involve the 13 groups and they must be funded. And to not do that would be a great injustice, because what we could learn from that process, if there were failures, could well inform potential failures of what's happening here on Highway 16. I know the Commission has seen this already, and I'll just touch on a couple of quotes. This letter went to the Solicitor General this week, and it's from a respected law professor from the University of Toronto, Kent Roach, and he says, we can identify no other case in Canada where a government having appointed a commission of inquiry then in effect overturns a commission's decision on standing by refusing funding for participation. The refusal of funding in this case is also especially egregious because the groups granted standings represent some of the most disadvantaged women in Canada, including Aboriginal women, women living in poverty, women with drug addictions, and women engaged in prostitution, the letter said. So I would urge the Commission to continue their pressure on government to make sure that funding does come forth, because it would be a great injustice, and it may well put women at risk here on Highway 16 if we don't have all the answers from that process. I want you to know that your MLA certainly brings these issues forward. It's not unknown in the legislature. We're all a bunch of elected people, but what you do and say here does ripple through the legislature. And I know when Gary and I were elected in 2005 first, I didn't know very much. I was appointed the Aboriginal Affairs critic, and since that time I've done dozens and dozens of member statements, standing in the legislature to get something on record. 2005, my very first private member statement, and these are 2-minute statements, and the speaker shuts you down right on the nose here. These are not political statements, or the speaker shuts you right down. There was an article in the paper that I found very disturbing. On Saturday, people marched along Southbridge towards Highway 16. They marched to bring attention to the missing women that have disappeared along the highway and in that area. A disproportionate number of those women were Aboriginal. I will refer to the Amnesty International report of last year entitled Stolen Sisters, a human rights response to discrimination and violence against Indigenous women in Canada. The report, it says, quote, the social and economic marginalization of Indigenous women, along with a history of government policies that have torn apart families in Indigenous communities, have pushed the disproportionate number of those Indigenous women into dangerous situations. Further, these are not new concerns. Indigenous women's organizations, government commissions, the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, and the United Nations human rights bodies have all called on Canadian officials to address the marginalization of Indigenous women in Canadian society, and further, and to ensure that the rights and the safety of Indigenous people are respected and upheld by police and the courts. Sadly, fundamental measures that could help to reduce the risk of violence to Indigenous women remain unimplemented. I bring this to the attention of the House, and I support those marchers on Highway 16. they should not need to march to raise attention. I suggest that if the same number of people, girls, women, had gone missing in more affluent regions, no one would have needed to march to get attention. Fast forward 4 years, I rose in the legislature. On February 14th, Victoria joined other major cities in honoring murdered women and Indigenous peoples from across the province. I attended the rally organized by the students from the University of Victoria and Campbellson College. The purpose of the rally, which ended at the legislature, was to create awareness, grieve for the loss of women, show support for the families, and remember the over 500 missing and murdered Indigenous women from Vancouver Island, from British Columbia, and all over Canada. Hundreds gathered for the event, and as I marched, I realized I was becoming angry. I recalled how, as a fledgling MLA in this House and a new Aboriginal Affairs critic in 2005, I had risen in this House to bring attention to the same issue. I referred to the Amnesty report in 2004 entitled Stolen Sisters, and I spoke of the missing and murdered women along Highway 16, the Highway of Tears. Since then, I and many of my colleagues have met with families and friends of the missing and murdered women. And to a person, they feel the frustration of abandonment and frustration and outrage at the failures of the system to provide the resources necessary for justice. The Amnesty report identified that social and economic marginalization of Indigenous women, along with government policies that have torn apart families and communities, as well as the failures of policy and the justice system, as contributing to the problem. Combine that with the worst combination of racism and sexism, and there is an expectation that societal indifference to the welfare and safety of Indigenous women will allow the perpetrators, the predators, to escape justice. Here we are 4 years later. I stand here raising the same issues again, and nothing has changed. So I'll paraphrase from my closing statement of 4 years ago. I suggest that the missing and murdered women were from an affluent region of BC and involving non-Aboriginal women. We would not need to march to raise attention. So your words here have been and will be reflected in the record of the legislature, and we'll continue to keep pressure on to make sure the resources are brought to bear. And I have every confidence in Commissioner Opal that what he hears here, what he hears in Terrace, what he hears in Smithers, Hazelton, Prince George, will all be informed in his recommendations, and I look forward to those recommendations and real change to be made. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we're drawing to an end. It's been an amazing day, amazing afternoon. There's hope. There's also extreme losses and trauma, lots of trauma that continues. And I think that many people who said things other people felt when those things were said. The excellent overview of the Highway 16 Symposium, that it really hasn't moved forward. That 3 comments, I think, putting forward that there should be an inquiry for Highway 16, that want justice. These 2 very strong comments wanted justice for these women, these missing and murdered women. Some comments with respect to wanting to trust the RCMP, but finding some of them are the perpetrators themselves and needing to look at that. Historical background, there's not just a simple situation that we've got here. We've got a huge background of colonization, of treating Aboriginal people less than human. Need education, need support, going on into transition, our transit safety routes, moving forward perhaps with some of the Highway 16 with respect to having transportation, moving forward into Aboriginal people would be very powerful working together, being a force, missing the loss, missing even from way back in 1978, still not moving forward from that loss, staying with that trauma, having to resolve the Missing Women Commission of Inquiry is serious, is looking at this very seriously. This will be recorded, will be part of the report, and I'll leave it to your Honorable Commissioner Wally Opal perhaps to say the closing words.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
I just want to, I want to thank everybody for attending. Elder Maurice, thank you very much for attending and giving us your blessing. I want to thank all the various voices in the community who came here. We've learned a lot from you. We know the particular circumstances that each one of you represents. We're grateful for that. We want to hear from the community. We need to put your voices and your recommendations, your concerns, your complaints into writing so that the appropriate changes, if any, need to be made. So that's why we're here. And I just want you to know that, speaking on behalf of all the staff on the Commission of Inquiry, we are grateful for your expertise and your background. You are the people on the ground here that are doing the work. You represent this community. And the purpose of the Commission of Inquiry is to listen to the voices of the community. That's why this inquiry was established. We'll never make any changes in any part of our society if we don't listen to the voices of the public. And so I want to thank all of you for coming here and giving us your views and your opinions. These are very, very important issues. I can't think of anything more important than dealing with the issue of violence and hatred in our society. And so we need to deal with it. Thank you very much.
I'm asking Elder Kelly Smith to say the closing prayer.
Like before everybody closing prayer, I'm not going to be happy if I don't say what I have to say. I missed the meeting by the nick of my chin, but before they close, I'd like to say what I have to say, if you don't mind. Well, my name is Bonita Mary Wilson. I've been a resident here in Prince Rupert for quite some time. Okay, excuse me. My name is Bonita Mary Wilson. I've been a resident here for quite some time. I got off the boat in 1995. One day, it was a Sunday afternoon, I went hitchhiking from here to go to Port Ed. I remember the guy's name. His name's Dan Glover. He tried to kill me on a highway. He picked me up here outside of the thing. So I am a victim of highway tears. Thank God I survived. I don't know how I survived, but I survived. The guy grabbed me right by my hair like this, wrapped my hair right around his wrist, and took it and slammed it right up on the dash. And before you know it, I hit my head on the dash, and I came back down, and it was lights out. I was out. He just crushed my whole head right from back. And when I woke up, when I woke up, he took me and sprayed me right across his bed, or his couch I got in front of his truck. And I was laying like this, and he was right there, waiting until I woke up, choking me to my last dying breath. And I remember one word saying too, in my prayer when I said it's ready. I couldn't fight anymore because it was bigger than me. And plus he was sitting on me, choking me. And I remember, God, is this the way I'm gonna die? That's all I remember saying, is this the way I'm gonna die? Then I started praying about my other kids that was here, Daniel, Olga, and Patty. And just for the grace of God, I had enough strength to rip her right off of me and take him and crush him against his own wall. I even had to go to court for that, and I told the judge, or not the judge, I told Darryl Burns, I had to let that guy go 3-4 times. He said, and you know how he won? He said, oh, don't you think it's the other way around, Benita? After all, you're the one that let him go 3-4 times, didn't you? I went, well, yeah, you know, what do you expect? You know, that minute, I'm going to swear to God I wanted to kill him that one little lickety split of a second because what he did. I said, you should have killed me. I don't know, I prayed and I asked God to give me strength to get him off of me. I went to court 3 or 4 times and there was not enough evidence to convict the guy. But you know what, I don't even know where he is. Somebody should find him. this very day on, I want to go right to his face and ask him why he did this to me. And why did the cops did not help me because I was an Indian or what? Because there's so much said I've read in court. And that's called really racist, prejudice, and you can name it. I had to suffer that. I wrote letters after letters and I told him he should have went in this opening. Maybe that should have been read the other way around. Maybe he should have been so scared of you. After all, you're a fisherman, aren't you? And you got a reputation of being so-and-so. That's what they did, and they blame me. And I don't think anybody would ever survive what I survived out on that highway of tears. My head got smashed right on the dash and everything was crunched. And I woke up, he was just ready. And you know what, the third time he let me go, he said, all you got black bitches, you're all alike. I went, oh, one more time you say that again, you got the wrong person. I don't know you, and you don't know me. And I said, one more time you ever say that again, I'm gonna get to you, like that, because I was getting madder about a minute. And the third time I let him go, and he had a knife at my throat. And I went, oh God, wow, now what are you gonna do? How are you going to get yourself in this, out of this mess? I thought to myself, how? How am I? This knife bitten right in my windpipe, right here. You know how I got him out? I prayed again, God, please. I have one move and make sure it's going to be a really good move. One good move. Make sure it's going to be a good one. And I prayed, and I braced myself like this on the chair, and I said, one move. I made one big hearing like this. Boom! I almost knocked myself out by the window, and I used my left hand, and I never hit with my left hand. I'm a right-hander, and I prayed all I got that day to give me the force to just smash that thing right out of his effing hand. Boom! And that knife went back. That's how I got away. That's how I said one big force to give it, and I remember that knife going back in the back of the truck. I said every word to the cops one by step one. And they still to this day do not believe me. I'm going, wow, what if it's their cousin or their uncle or their, whatever who they were, I don't know, but they're protecting them, and his name's Danny Glover. I will tell that to the whole world. I remember his name was on the paper in the courthouse. And then I'm more mad because the courthouse said that the Crown prosecutor was my lawyer. You don't need a lawyer. You got nothing to be embarrassed about, hey, Benita. That's what Darryl Burns said. I went, no. He said, well, you don't need a lawyer. The Crown prosecutor is going to be your lawyer. I went, what good of a job did he do? They let him walk, and they threw me out of court. That's the justice I got. And I'm lucky I survived that thing. And to this day, I still don't go out after 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. I don't even hardly even get a ride from my best friend because I was so scared, petrified what happened. You know? And I want to tell that whole world that too, that's not fair how we get treated. It's not fair what they did to me. I'm a human being too. You know? I deserve to live just as much as everybody else does. We ought to be treated with respect. It's thank God I crawled my way out of there with that wet paper bag that very Sunday morning afternoon. And that's what I wanted to say. And I hope everybody gets together and help fight for our rights. Because that's not fair. I want to take that guy back to court again. So that's not fair what that judge said or the other guy said or the other guy. Because the Crown prosecutor never did anything anyways. You let him go. So whoever the guy is, thanks. And I wanted to say that last piece because I would have never rest the day of my life for the death and for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.